Thank you for having us for the Marketing Society. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Great. So I think I can start before we move on. The last session was very interesting. I think there's a lot that has been said, a lot of information which is very heavy to take in, but also very relevant to marketers. It was very interesting to listen to Aline speak. The fact that Unilever got that opportunity is so fitting because when we look at everything that Unilever has done over the years, they've always had that commentary, which is keeping a bias-free world or moving away from a stereotype. And even when Aline was playing those examples for us, which basically spoke about messaging targeting India, I couldn't help but stop smiling because I think it was so spot on, right? I'm based in Singapore, and for someone who's grown up in India, each of those messages are so ingrained in society that I think it's important to put that across in the nicest and most subtle way. If it's LGBTQ and the transgender community, or whether it's just about ethnicity, or even just about equality for women. So I think a lot of relevance in those examples, and a lot can be said just through simple advertising. And a great learning for us, I would say. I was looking through that entire session and learning so much, and realized post this event, I'm going to have to read up a lot more in terms of all the stats that we've got. A lot of relevant stats that each brand and marketer can take on. Stuff like or information which possibly we didn't know. Something like 3% of global advertising represents women on leadership. That's a pretty small number, isn't it? 2% targets individuals with disability, and yet we as marketers and brands and media houses target the masses. So are we actually reaching out to everyone who makes a difference? Possibly not yet. And while the direction is in the right effort, I think there's a lot more that we can do. In terms of women, in terms of disability, the LGBTQ, race, ethnicity. Just this morning, in fact, I was watching the news, and there was a brand by the name of Eco Textura. I believe it's based out of London. They created a mask keeping the pandemic in mind, which addresses disability of kids who cannot speak or hear because they need to read lips. So if your face is covered, how do they learn? How do they educate themselves? So they came out with a mask which exposes your lips and allows them to just take on more information and keep that learning process going for them. So I think there's the underlying message for us is possibly progressive advertising is the way forward. I know it's easier said than done, but I think we are moving in the right direction. There's a lot more that we can do. It was great to hear that Unilever has achieved 50% in terms of men and women, in terms of equality in that sense. But equality wasn't the only criteria. Equality with equity, equality with diversity, with inclusion, basically giving you a sense of belonging. And I think that is the way forward for all of us. Right at the end of that session, we also heard that what's good for society is good for business, and that's so true, right? Even from the earlier session on the Founders Panel, where I guess it is time for us to reflect, reset, and restart. But yeah, I'd love to hear from my fellow panelists as well, and understand if she agrees with what I've said or possibly said too much.
Hey, Saif, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree with you what you have said, mainly about, the last session Aline talked about, the company's performance, behavior, and communication, from the different dimension. How do they unstereotype? It is not about saying, it is about doing. It is about reflecting the audience reality. So that's, for me, is a big takeaway. Maybe stepping back a little bit at the beginning of the founder session, what I take away is the optimism. I think that's also one under threat theme today. When we started with the adventure at the beginning, Rob said, reframing from being a challenging time to a time of opportunity to learn and grow. I took away from the two founders, one is the platform for startup, how do they adapt and being agile and adopt, and always having that problem solving, innovative way of approaching things. I think there's a lot for us as marketers and communicators to learn from. And from Christina, the startup mentality, the bravery, to be brave to make some impact and difference. So really quite a lot to take away. And I think I wanted to leave the audience with one thing: being a Mandarin speaker, crisis in Mandarin actually means 危机, is literally mean risk and opportunity. So I wanted to leave everybody with that reframing, that it is a trying time, it is a challenging time. And also with the last session, we also heard about changing societal expectations on brands, on company, but it's also a tremendous opportunity. We just needed to be a bit more brave in our action, but also a bit more brave in our way of communicating and connecting. Early session talking about deep human connection and deep human connecting. And we are the connector as marketer and communicator. And I think we can all do better with a little bit of courage, little bit of bravery, but also deep insights and data-led insights. So that's the big takeaway from me. And with that optimism, let's, taking the year forward and be brave and making the impact that we are expected to make to help our brands, but also to help the society and community at large. Back to you, Julia.